Alright, welcome back. Today we're covering 15 sleepers who I think could help win you guys your fantasy leagues if you draft them. So they're going to be split into 3 sections, from guys that I think are sleepers in every league to guys that I think are sleepers in some deeper leagues, like 14 teams and up type of shit. So if you're not sure what a sleeper is in fantasy, it's basically just a guy that I think is getting drafted much lower than he should be. So that means if you draft them earlier, you'll be getting a lot of extra value on that pick. I'm basing this off of ESPN's average draft position, or ADP, and then their rank, which is the actual position they typically get drafted at. So as you can see, I've also included where I would draft these guys myself to kind of give you an idea of their value if you can get them earlier than they're typically getting drafted. So starting off, these are the guys who I think are sleepers in every league, and as you can see from the thumbnail, at number 1 I have Nick Claxton. So Nick Claxton, I'm really not sure what's going on, but last year he was averaging 38 fantasy points per game, and this year his average draft position is around 92, and he's ranked 83rd, which means he's going around 80 at the 83rd pick in most leagues. And I just really don't see why. Like, for me, that means they're expecting him to average like 32 fantasy points per game. I'm really not so sure why. On my rankings, which I can leave the link to in the description, my previous video, I ranked him at 53rd for this upcoming season, so that's like 30 spots of value if you can manage to draft him anywhere between there. And yeah, I'm just really not sure why they're expecting such a dip, or why people are kind of just forgetting he exists. Like, yes, Ben Simmons is probably coming back, but Claxton's still their starting center. He's still going to get like 30 minutes a game, and I'm not really seeing his production get hurt that much. So I think he can definitely be a huge, massive like help to your team if you can sort of get him around like anywhere between 50 and 83. 83 is just like ridiculously low. So anyways, moving on to number 2, we have Fred VanVleet. This is a guy, like, if you can get Claxton and Fred VanVleet, I think you're looking poised to like pretty much win your fantasy league, honestly, because the 30 spots of value is just like an insane sort of addition if you can add it to your team. So Fred VanVleet, his average draft position is around 70. He's ranked 58th, and I just don't understand this. Like, Kevin Porter Jr., he's not playing for the Rockets right now. That was the only kind of concern about Fred VanVleet's minutes, and even then, they just gave him a max contract, so he was probably going to start. I have him ranked at 24th. I think he's probably going to average around 43 fantasy points per game. He's going to be like the primary playmaker in Houston. He's going to be getting probably averaging around 9 assists. I can expect him to average around 20 points as well. He was averaging 42 last season on the Raptors, and now, I mean, he's going to have the ball in his hands, probably even a little bit more. So overall, I'm really not sure what is going on. If you get Fred in the 30s, like, that's like a league-winning pick in my opinion, honestly, because like I said, like, that is just absurd how low people tend to be drafting him. So definitely consider looking at Fred VanVleet and Nick Claxton. I think those are like the 2 biggest sleepers in my opinion, because 30 spots of value is very hard to find, and I mean, that's just a very solid pickup. So then at 3rd, we have Devin Vassell. His average draft position is 116. His rank is 105. As you can see, I have him at 71. I do think he's going to see a little bit of a boost now that he's playing with Victor Wembanyama. I think he's had a pretty solid season last year. He just had a few injury things, missed a few games and everything, but overall on the season, he ended up averaging around 33 fantasy points per game. I don't really see any reason why that should like drastically fall off a cliff or anything. I think if he averages around that, that's pretty solid. I could even see him taking a small leap. So anyways, I have him ranked at 71. I think, like I said, that's another like 30 spots of value right there for him. So definitely look at Devin Vassell. He is going way too late in most drafts. And then we have another Nets player after Nick Claxton. We have Ben Simmons. And I understand if you're a bit hesitant on Ben Simmons. Like I said, I totally get it. I talked about him in my rankings video. He's been hurt. He's missed a lot of time. But I mean, the upside is too high for him to be going at 118 in leagues. Like, that means he's getting drafted like after guys. Like, as I talked about, if you go look at like the live draft trends, which if you're on a computer on ESPN, you can sort of see he's going after guys like Mike Conley, Derek White, Jaden Ivey, like Kevon Looney. Are we really drafting Kevon Looney over Ben Simmons? That just seems kind of absurd to me. I had him at 85 on my rankings list, and I think the upside is just too high to be leaving him till 118. So that's another huge value grab. If you can get him in the 90s, maybe if you get him around like pick 100, I think you absolutely have to take the chance on Ben Simmons there, just because, like I already mentioned, the upside's too high to be leaving him till pick 118. So moving on, then we have Mark Williams, who I thought I was maybe a bit higher on than most people, and I think I might still be, but I ranked him at 88, and his average draft position at 124. His rank is 115. So, I mean, Mark Williams going at 115 in most drafts is a little bit insane to me as well. He's going around where Ben Simmons is. And, I mean, this is now the starting center solidified on the Hornets. I think he's going to be getting a ton of blocks. He's playing with Melo now, who is one of the best, pick-and-roll players in the league, in my opinion, in terms of finding the roll man. He's going to get a ton of rebounds. I'm expecting him to average around 10 rebounds. Maybe he can even get up to, like, 2 blocks per game. And then when you throw in just, like, the scoring on top of that, which will probably be around 12 points per game-ish, maybe even a little bit higher. I don't know why we're leaving him till 115. I mean, again, I already mentioned this, but like, are we drafting Kevon Looney and Mike Conley, Brandon Miller? Are we drafting guys like that over Mark Williams? I just don't really see why. I think Mark Williams has a lot of value if you can get him in your drafts. He's someone that I've personally been targeting in my draft picks, just because getting a starting center that's going to give you 30 minutes a game, has a pretty solidified position, super freak athlete, can give you a lot of blocks and shit like that. I think that's definitely an easy top 100 player. So yeah, leaving him to 115 I think is a bit crazy. And yeah, that kind of goes same with all of these guys. Like if you can get all 5 of these guys in like sort of like the discounted value that they seem to be going at, you're just going to have a massive boost to your chances of winning your league. And I think they are definitely guys that you should not be leaving as late as they're going. I mean, like I said, you're getting like 30 or 40 spots of value in my estimate for most of these guys. So definitely worth taking the chance and drafting them a bit earlier. All right, so now we're looking at guys who are sleepers a little bit later in drafts. First up, we have Chris Paul. As you can see, his average draft position right now is 98th. His rank is 88th. And as from my rankings, I put him at 73rd. And I'm not really understanding why we're drafting Chris Paul at 88th. Like, if we look at the average draft position, he's going behind guys like Clint Capella, Tobias Harris, Jakob Poeltl, like Keegan Murray. I don't like, why would I draft Keegan Murray over Chris Paul? Yes, I think Chris Paul's production is going to take a dip. He was averaging around 40 fantasy points last year. Yes, I know it looks like it physically hurts him to shoot a three-pointer because he's so old now. But still, I mean, he's going to be having pretty solid production in my estimates on the Warriors. His assists are still going to be high. He can still score the ball. Like, he's still a mid-range maestro, all that good stuff. So yes, his numbers do take a slight decrease, but I don't think they decrease enough to be drafting him behind guys like I already mentioned. I can't expect him to average less than 35 fantasy points per game, honestly. Like, he's going to be around that range, in my opinion. Maybe he's a little bit lower. Like, if I have him at 73rd, that means at the worst case scenario, I think he's going to average 33 fantasy points per game, which I really don't think is too out of the question for Chris Paul to accomplish. So yeah, if you can get him anywhere between that 73 and 88 range, I think you're getting a lot of good value on Chris Paul. I think people are a bit concerned because he's on a new team and everything, but I don't think his value just like drastically falls off a cliff as much as people seem to be expecting it to. And then moving on, next up we have Anthony Simons. Shout out my guy Brills. I sent my sleepers list to the Sammy boys, and I asked if I forgot anyone. Brills hooked up Anthony Simons, absolutely. So average draft position is 90. His rank is 82nd. I have him at 69. And I talked about him in my rankings video, so I won't go into too much detail. So if you want to, you can check that out. But yeah, I think he's a very solid player, 3-level threat. I think he's going to get a lot of shots for the Blazers. I still think, Shaden and Scoot are kind of like your like top options, but I still think that I'm talking about Shaden Sharp, he's next up, but I still think Anthony Simons is going to be giving you some pretty decent value, not as much as like 30 points of value, but if you can get him at like in the 70s, I think that's some pretty good return value on Anthony Simons. He's going a little bit later than I would like him to, so see if you can take advantage of that. And then we'll just go ahead and move on to the next guy, who's another Portland Trailblazer. We have Shaden Sharp, and this is a guy, average draft position 121. His rank is 114. I had him at 87. And like I said, this is kind of a similar draft position to what we were already looking at. But again, I don't know why Kevon Looney's just catching strays. But are we taking like Derek White, Kevon Looney, Daniel Gafford, who I still have on this list, but I don't think he should be going over Shaden Sharp for sure. Jaden Ivey, stuff like that. Like that is just too low for Shaden Sharp. I think he's going to have a pretty solid season for Portland. Going to get quite a few shots. He looks like he's an explosive athlete, which we all know. I think his scoring is going to see a sizable increase, and I definitely would not be leaving him out of the top 100 this year. Moving on, next up we have Markelle Fultz. This is a guy that I know the Magic's point guard rotation, or their guard rotation in general, is kind of a logjam, but he's kind of solidified as their number one playmaker for the guard position. And his average draft position is 132. His rank is 126. I have him at 95, so we're looking at like 30 spots of value-ish again. And that's something that I don't really think you should leave on the waiver wire, or even just let him fall as far as he's going. If you're in like a more shallow league, maybe he's on your waiver wire. Because if we look at like what he averaged last season, it was around like 33 fantasy points per game. And now I'm like, yes, maybe that falls off a little bit, but I'm not sure why we're leaving him out of the top 100. If someone averages 33 fantasy points per game, they're going to be in the top 100. So definitely look at picking up Fultz anywhere. But if you can get him in the hundreds, if you can get him in the 110s, great value. He's definitely going to overshoot that. I don't really see any way he sort of falls below that range. I'm giving him quite a lot of like cushion on where he could end up, but I still think there's no way it's at 126. And then at 10, I just kind of included two Nuggets guys, Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., because they're going at 99 and 100, and I have them at 80 to 82, so about 20 spots of value. I think they're both going to average around 32 fantasy points per game, which isn't like a crazy take because that's pretty much what they averaged last season. And the Nuggets roster hasn't really changed that much. Like, it's pretty much just like Bruce Brown is gone now, but that didn't really affect Gordon and Michael Porter Jr.'s value all that much. So this isn't even like a controversial one in my opinion. I'm just kind of stating I don't really know why we're taking these guys so much lower than what we know they can produce as they just did it. So definitely look at taking them. If you can get them in the 90s, I think that's some pretty solid value. You're looking at like 10 spots of value there in my estimates. So definitely worth taking a look at. And now we're going to go ahead and get into the deep sleepers, who are for guys that are in like 14 team and up kind of leagues. All right, so to finish it off, we're into the guys that are in like the deeper league kind of sleepers. So this is towards the end of drafts if you're in shallow leagues, and then if you're in like a deeper 14 team and up league, these are guys that I think should absolutely be drafted, and I'll sort of just progress as it goes along. So number one, we have Jalen Duren. His average draft position 136. His rank is also 136. I personally have him. I can see him getting into the 115 range, which I don't think is too insane. If we look at some guys that are getting drafted ahead of him, we have like Royce O'Neal, Karis LeVert, Kelly Oubre. And I think while there is a bit of competition at the center spot, I think Duren has emerged as the number one guy over Wiseman, Isaiah Stewart, and Bagley. If we look at last year, he had quite a few monster games in terms of like double-doubles, high rebounds, high points. He's a pretty good rim protector as well. He's getting a few blocks here and there. And yeah, his fantasy numbers were a bit low because there was a slow start to the season and there was a lot of competition, like I mentioned. But now I think he has kind of solidified the starting role on the team. I'm expecting him to get like around 28 minutes per game. And when you have like a freak athlete at center that you know is going to get you like rebounds and points and a few blocks, if they're getting 28 minutes per game, I think they definitely overshoot getting drafted at 136. So I'm expecting him in like the 115 range, but if you can draft him in the 120s, around 125 or so, I think that's a little bit of a small return, but it will benefit your fantasy team, and I would definitely consider taking a look at him. Then next up, we have Mitchell Robinson, kind of a similar situation. His average draft position, 137. His rank is 143. I personally think he can go anywhere in the 120s, and you're getting some pretty good value on him. His main problem was the fouling out. It's been his problem since he's gotten to the league. He can't stop fouling people, but he has gotten better at it as the years have progressed, as he's developed as a player. And I do think when you have a starting center, it's a very similar situation to Duren, except there's really not any competition on the Knicks for him. I think Mitchell Robinson is capable of putting up some huge numbers. I mean, the blocks are just insane. He's had, to end the season, he had a few 7-block games. Sorry, there's a truck going by. And I mean, he's capable of putting up some high rebounding as well. So I definitely think you need to look at Mitchell Robinson later in your drafts, especially in the 120s. I don't think you should let him fall to 143. There's just a lot of value there to be had, and I don't think you want someone else in your league to sort of take advantage of it, because Mitchell Robinson could very easily have a solid season if he can stay on the court. And then next up at third, this is for the much deeper leagues now for these last three. First up, I have Obi Toppin on the Indiana Pacers now. His rank is 164. And on my personal rankings, I've done a top 100. I haven't done a top 200. I don't know if I really have the time or care to be going that much into detail before the season starts, because probably just wouldn't be too good a list for you guys. So I don't know if I'll do that. But that's kind of a sidebar. I have him. I don't see him falling any lower than the 130s. A freak athlete that's now starting on the Pacers. He is a very solid lob threat playing with Halliburton. He can shoot the three a little bit. He's a decent rebounder, explosive athlete. Personally, I think he's not going to blow you away. But if you're in a deeper league and you're sort of looking at guys who you might want to draft, I mean, there's a lot worse options to be going with than Obi Toppin, because I mean, if we just look at guys that are getting ranked above him, so he's at 164. The guy rated above him is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Zach Collins, Tari Eason, Grady Dick, Dylan Brooks. I would take Obi Toppin over most of those guys, I would say, pretty comfortably. Same with Herb Jones. Herb Jones is up there, and I'm personally more comfortable with Obi Toppin because he's getting starting minutes, and I know he can sort of produce in a few categories. So definitely considering taking a look at him. And then next up, again, very similar situation. These are for your 16 to 20 team kind of leagues when you're at that last pick and the waiver wire just looks like dog shit. I'm gonna go with Jalen Johnson on the Atlanta Hawks. So his rank, I mean, he's so far down, it kind of levels out at 140. So if they're above 140, it essentially means they're just not getting drafted at all. So his rank is 880th, and there's guys ahead of him that aren't even in the league anymore. So people are just kind of forgetting he exists. I don't really see any way he doesn't finish at least in the top 150. Explosive athlete, he's getting starting minutes at the power forward, I would expect, playing with Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, kind of filling that Collins role that he left. And like I said, he's not going to blow you away. He's not going to, I don't think he's averaging 30 fantasy points per game or anything like that. But if you're looking at the kind of value at the very last pick of a draft, I don't think you should leave Jalen Johnson on the waiver wire because, like I mentioned, he is starting, explosive athlete. He's going to give you a few rebounds, a few lob threats here and there. Nothing that'll blow you away, but I definitely don't think he should be on the waiver wire in like a 16 to 20 team kind of league. And then the same thing goes with Tim Hardaway Jr. I mean, this is like the third scoring option on the Mavericks, and while like you do have the two ball dominant players in Kyrie and Luka, I don't think you should be leaving Tim Hardaway Jr. on the waiver wire. He's even lower than Jalen Johnson. His rank is like 900. I think personally he ends in like the 150-ish range. If those two miss any time, he takes a big jump, obviously. But even given that, I mean, he's still going to average probably around 25 fantasy points per game, I would expect. So I think it is worth taking the risk of drafting him and with your last pick, especially when there's not that much risk involved when he's like left on the waiver wire. And he is very capable of having those nights where he has like a 30 fantasy point kind of game. And when you're in those deep kind of leagues, shit like that is a lot more valuable than you'd think it is. So definitely wouldn't leave him on the waiver wire, especially in like 18 to 20 team leagues. I think it's definitely worth taking a look at Tim Hardaway Jr. And yeah, I think that's going to wrap up the sleeper list. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want another video where I go more in depth, because there is totally a lot more sleepers, I just tried to pick like the first 15 that I could think of that I think would give you guys a lot of value, but I can do an even deeper dive analysis. If that's something that you guys would be interested in, just let me know in the comments. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to do something you like today. Don't waste your day on your phone or on YouTube. Go fucking read a book or do something you like. Anyways, thanks for watching. As always, have a good day. Get out of here. Bye.